I remember every detail of the room where it all came apart. The air was heavy with the scent of hotel coffee and nervous anticipation. Stale floral carpet stretched underfoot as I stood on the shallow platform, backlit by the cheap chandelier. The faces arrayed before me, investors, fellow designers, a few local journalists, watched with practiced detachment as I slid click after click through my modest little slideshow. It was 2012 in a forgettable conference room off Gran Via, mixed Spanish and English floating in the air. My hands trembled when I held the remote. I introduced myself, me llamo Mateo. I grew up in Lavapiés. My dream is to create a fashion line that will take Madrid to the world. I believe in the future of Spanish design. I'd spent months working on those sketches and sourcing fabrics. Sleepless nights, nervous afternoons, the hush of my mother's apartment as I sewed late in the kitchen. My favorite piece, an asymmetric blazer, deep plum linen with copper silk piping, looked awkward on the mannequin under fluorescent light. I watched the faces in front of me, some scrolled on their phones, one snorted. I stumbled over my English, my nerves, my conviction. Words came out too soft, rushed, messy. Each piece reflects, the vibrant contradictions of Madrid, old and new, bold and poetic. Someone at the back, I remember this, smirked so openly I nearly flinched. My voice faded as doubt swarmed in. At the end of my pitch, I looked up, hoping, praying for a question. Silence. A grey-haired woman in a red scarf finally coughed. "You are self-taught?" "Yes," she asked in Spanish, smiling thinly. I nodded. "Ambitious," she said. Someone else murmured, "Locura." No offers, no business cards, nothing. Afterwards, I hid in the corridor, folding up my jacket with shaking hands. Drops of sweat clung to my hair. A friend from the neighborhood, Rodrigo, caught my eye on the way out. "Buen intento, Mateo," he muttered, clapping my shoulder, but his tone was flat. Pity maybe, certainly not pride. I rode the metro home, the city blurring past the scratched glass. I watched my reflection, tall, thin, awkward, superimposed over the tunnels. My phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Pablo. "So, Fashion King, how'd your catwalk go? Should I prepare a red carpet at home, Jarjas?" I stared at it until the train reached Lavapiés. Climbing the stairs, I felt my optimism shriveled up somewhere inside. It wasn't just the pitch. It was the months, no, the years of eyebrow raises and forced laughter at family dinners, of "Seriously, Mateo, un diseñador, those people are all rich or geniuses." My mother holding on to hope but so tired. My uncles and neighbors, their skepticism so heavy it felt like gravity pulling me down. Home was the fourth floor, no elevator, the building smelling of onions and wet cement. My mother's small oven still gave the kitchen a constant warmth. She set down a plate of cold dough for me without a word. She glanced at the bags under my eyes, her mouth tightening, not with cruelty but with fear. I kept my head bowed. In my room, the portfolio bags slumped against the bed, looking defeated. I sat at my desk, tracing the lines of my newest sketch, unseen, unloved, perhaps forever. My world closed in. Worse than the failure was the mockery. At Sunday lunch, all the cousins squeezed around the table. Pablo would nudge the others. "Careful, Mateo's using us for his next revolutionary looks. Maybe Abuela's apron will be in Paris next year." That drew laughter. My mother would wince, not daring to defend me. Abuela would shake her head, mouthing a quiet prayer. In the neighborhood, friends waved from the corner bar, teasing, "Where's your model girlfriend? When will you make us rich with your Paris shows?" I smiled, tight and embarrassed, and walked on. Shame burned in my chest. I taught sewing lessons to old ladies, fixed neighbors' pants, did alterations in my mother's kitchen. I applied to design schools, rejected or beyond what we could afford. Still, late at night, after my mother went to bed and the city outside quieted, I kept sketching. I cut cloth by hand. I pieced together scraps, rusty singer whirring below the hum of the fridge. In those hours the laughter faded. My dream, battered, bruised, never entirely dead, kept me company. The next years were a grind, both small and endless. I waited tables, saved euros, begged older tailors in Malasaña for lessons. Some snorted when I asked. Others relented, letting me observe, then teaching me tricks for the price of beers at the end of a shift. I became known as a stubborn stray, always asking questions, always sketching. I applied to every competition I saw posted online or in the markets. Once, I won third place in a contest held in a forgotten basement club. My prize was a bolt of discounted linen. The first jacket I sold, deep green with copper buttons, was to a tourist who found me on Instagram. Bit by bit, the underground took me in. Stylists from Chuka, drag queens who needed daring, cheap costumes, a couple of rock singers wanting something new. They took a chance on me, paid in cash or vouchers or just exposure. In my family's eyes, this was not real. Design, Number Mateo is a tailor for clowns and street kids, Pablo laughed. My mother tried to hide her relief when I brought home tips from waiting tables. Years passed. I let their cynicism fade into background noise. The city had so many louder things to say. Madrid changed too, new stores in Malasaña, new faces. I slept little and worked much. What kept me going was simple. The energy of creation. The snap of good scissors through cloth, chalk marks vanishing with the heat of an iron, that moment when a stranger walked away smiling in something I had made. At night, I'd walk to the rooftops, looking out at the blinking lights, breathing in Madrid's dry midnight wind, and imagine my name on one of those bright storefronts. 4 years after the pitch, I had a booth at Mercado de Motors, mine with my name above the rack. I had no money for a banner, so my friend Santi painted one on butcher's paper. People stopped, tried things on. Another friend, Elissa, wore my best coat and charmed the crowd. I sold out by the end of the weekend. One sale led to another. Photos of my work floated around on fashion blogs. Editors emailed. 2 of my jackets wound up in a music video, not the cover of Vogue, but suddenly my designs were being seen, not just laughed at. I built a fragile, growing network. Larger gigs followed. A capsule collection for a new boutique, a styling job for a popular television host. My name, Mateo Reyes, appeared in a local magazine. My mother framed the clipping, showing it proudly to visitors. Is my hijo. There were setbacks, wrong shipments, angry clients, a loan shark who threatened me when I couldn't pay rent. I ate rice and eggs for weeks. I got sick from exhaustion, coughed blood, frightened my mother. Still, somehow, I kept moving. I was running on pure stubbornness. The breakthrough came in 2019. A Barcelona agency saw my work at a show, loved it, pushed me for a meeting. I took a train, nervous as the first day of school. Their offices gleamed, modern, nothing like the scraps I worked in. This time my pitch was steady. I knew what I had. All those years of humiliation had carved the nervousness out of me, left only bone. The agency signed me. Soon after, I was on a plane to Paris, my first real show, no longer begging for attention but invited. I was 32, finally wearing my destiny like a well-cut coat. I wept backstage after the standing ovation, overwhelmed, thinking of my city, my mother, all those small humiliations. Press, articles, one of my designs landed in a major magazine spread, Mateo Reyes. Modernidad desde Madrid. I saved every clipping, every review, every invitation. I made money, not millions, but enough to send my mother on her first trip north to Santander to replace her broken stove, to eat at restaurants with real napkins and wine from a bottle, not a box. Still, every time I called home, every time my aunt would say, "So Mateo, are you still sewing for clowns?" It strung. Madrid still seemed to remember the shy boy with broken dreams, not the man who was making it. When success came, people back home seemed slow to notice. I sent gifts, original scarves, a coat for Abuela. Mother wore my designs at church, proud and awkward. Pablo said, "Well, nice jacket, primo, but are you famous? Then the pandemic hit, orders slowed, I nearly closed up again. But in the quiet and fear, a new desire formed in me, a hunger to return home, not in defeat but in proof. To show not just my mother, but all of them, my world, my success. So in 2022, I set up my own store, small, stylish, in a bright corner on Cal del Pez. I worked every hour, every detail, salvaged wood counter, gold lights, big glass windows. The day before opening, I watched the sunlight spill on my first run of jackets, rich and colorful in the late afternoon. I called my mother. "Do you want to come to the opening? Maybe bring Pablo and Abuela too." She hesitated on the line. "Claro, hijo, but you know your uncle," he says. "Just come," I said, my voice trembled but only a little. The morning of the opening, I barely slept. My nerves prickled as I prepared, brushing lint from sleeves, aligning every hanger, arranging flowers by the door. A soft October breeze pulled scents of roasted chestnuts and churros through the open window. People filed in slowly, some friends from the design world, cheek kisses, congratulations, their praise a warm balm. Then near noon my mother appeared, her hair in a soft bun, eyes red with emotion. She wore a plum winter coat I had made for Paris, tailored just for her, gold buttons shining. She wrapped me in a hug nearly hard enough to bruise. "My hijo," she whispered, voice thick. Behind her, Abuela shuffled in, clutching her cane. Pablo trailed, smirking, jacket open over a wrinkled shirt. A few cousins I hadn't seen in years came too, tumbling in from the street staring at the displays. Some neighbors as well, Rodrigo now balding and settled, the old man from the fourth floor, even Santi who painted my first banner. They milled near the wine and canapes, blinking at the streaming light, almost unsure of where to stand. As the hour passed, the store filled. I floated, pouring drinks and greeting guests, tracking my family out of the corner of my eye. They circled the racks, touching the cloth, reading the tags. I heard them mutter, "He really did it, and have you seen these prices?" At noon, my agent arrived with two women, one a well-known magazine editor in a slick black dress, the other the director of a new design festival. She hugged me, then turned to my mother. "Señora Reyes, your son is a genius, a revolución para la moda española." Cameras flashed, the editor asked for a photo, with me, my mother, my designs. Someone outside snapped through the window, city and store blending in the shot, but it wasn't until Rodrigo whispered, "Mateo, look," that I saw the final proof. My cousin Pablo was standing at the corner display, flushed, grinning, holding one of my blazers. "Hey man, is this one the famous Paris cut?" He tried it on, staring at himself in the mirror. For a moment he looked like someone else, a man proud, transformed, new. My aunt gasped, clasping her hands to her chest. Then Pablo, the old skeptic, turned. "Mateo," he called, voice loud, laughter gone. "This is really good, like actually good. I look like a damn CEO." People laughed, but it was different laughter, no longer mean but warm. And then, in a moment I will never forget, I saw it in their eyes, the cousins, the neighbors, even Abuela blinking back tears. Not just pride but recognition, they really saw me. The years of jokes, disbelief, invisible wounds, suddenly healed just a little. I steadied myself against the counter, heart thumping. The shame I'd carried, clung to, wore like a second skin, slipped away. People browsed, bought, congratulated me. The mayor's assistant stopped by, congratulating me on putting Madrid on the fashion map. As the sun slipped lower, golden dust floating through the store, the laughter grew brighter, easier. Even Pablo, now walking with another cousin, laughed about how they should buy up my jackets before I got too expensive for Lavapiés. That afternoon, I slipped out onto the street for a breath of air. The sounds of Madrid, distant traffic, children, the faint melodies of a street guitarist, rose around me. I looked in at my shop, seeing my family and friends mingling, drinking, alive. For the first time in years, I stood tall in my own city, the weight gone from my chest. Mom sat by the window beaming, surrounded by women from church. Pablo modeled his jacket, Elissa teased him. The skeptics, and they had been many, stood in the glowing proof of my dream made real, each suit, each coat a small vindication. I lingered outside a long while, listening. The hum of Madrid, the laughter inside, the quiet certainty of having come home. I thought of the boy on the metro, shamed and shrinking, and sent a silent message to him across the years. You were right to try. You were right not to give up. Eventually, I stepped back into the shop. My mother reached for me, pulling me into the circle of her arms, her pride shining. The faces around us, friends, doubters, believers at last, blurred as tears pricked my eyes. I held on to her, breathing in the scent of her hair and the warmth of home, letting the sounds of voices and the city and the soft brushing of silk at my fingertips remind me, this dream, once mocked and battered, was finally mine. And now I was finally home's,